Stephen had always considered himself a patient man, someone who could take a lot and just move on. He had built his life around this principle, whether it was with his family, friends, or relationships, but nothing had prepared him for what he had discovered just before Christmas. Nothing had prepared him for the betrayal. He and his girlfriend had been together for a little over 2 years. They'd met at a party, hit it off instantly, and everything seemed to fall into place from there. She was smart, kind, and affectionate. Stephen had fallen for her completely, and he believed that they had a future together. But then, just before the holiday season, Stephen made a discovery that shattered everything. While going through some old files on his phone, he accidentally stumbled upon something that had been left open on her device. A video. It wasn't just any video. It was a video of her with another man. The shock hit him like a ton of bricks, but that wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part was the date. The video wasn't from some time before they met. It was recent. It was from just a few weeks ago. The next few days were a blur of confusion, anger, and disbelief. Stephen didn't want to believe it at first, but the evidence was undeniable. The video was just the tip of the iceberg. He started to find more and more signs of infidelity, messages, photos, and even receipts from a hotel he hadn't been to. His gut told him everything he needed to know, but still he couldn't quite accept it. The realization hit him like a wave. She had been cheating on him the entire time. He confronted her one night, his heart pounding in his chest. "I saw the video," he said, his voice shaking with anger and hurt. "And I know there's more. You've been seeing someone else, haven't you?" Her face went pale, but she tried to deny it, acting as if she had nothing to hide. "Stephen, that video, it's not what you think. It was before we started dating," she said, her words barely audible. But Stephen knew better. The dates didn't match. The way she tried to cover it up, it all felt wrong. "Don't lie to me," he spat, feeling his heart crumble. "You've been with someone else the entire time we've been together, haven't you?" She started to get defensive, using excuses, blaming the situation on everything but the truth. The lies kept coming, one after another. She even accused Stephen of being paranoid, making him feel crazy for questioning her. But deep down, Stephen knew the truth, even if she wouldn't admit it. The gaslighting had gone on for months, maybe longer, but now he couldn't ignore it. He had to end it. On New Year's Eve, Stephen finally made the decision. He packed his things, walked out of their shared apartment, and ended the relationship. The next morning, as the new year began, he sat in his car, staring out at the cold, empty streets, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. The days following the breakup were a blur for Stephen. He couldn't think straight. His mind kept racing, replaying every moment from the last 2 years. How could he have missed the signs? Was he really that blind? He couldn't stop questioning everything. The late nights, the weird looks, the subtle distancing. He had been so sure of her, so sure of their relationship, but now it all felt like a lie. After the breakup, Stephen tried to stay busy. He spent long hours at work, avoiding his apartment as much as possible. The place they had shared now felt like a prison, a constant reminder of everything that had gone wrong. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the gaslighting. The way she had made him feel crazy for even questioning her. The video he found, the lies she had told about it, and the way she twisted everything to make him feel like he was imagining things. It made him question his own reality for a while. He didn't reach out to her, but the temptation to message her, to get answers, was always there. What had gone wrong? Why hadn't she just been honest? She had made him feel like he wasn't good enough, that his suspicions were just him being paranoid. The emotional manipulation had been so subtle, he hadn't realized how deeply it had affected him until now. The first few days were the hardest. Stephen tried to distract himself by hanging out with friends, throwing himself into hobbies, and even spending more time at the gym. But no matter what he did, the empty feeling in his chest wouldn't go away. He had lost someone who he had trusted with his heart, someone who had promised him that she was the one. The worst part was he still had feelings for her, despite everything she had done to him. One night, about a week after the breakup, Stephen was sitting at his favorite bar, trying to distract himself with a drink. He was scrolling through his phone, scrolling aimlessly when a message popped up, a group chat message from his old friends. One of them had tagged him in a post. It was from her. She had posted a photo of herself, smiling, looking carefree. And there he was, the man in the photo with her. The same guy from the video. Stephen's heart sank. He had known she was seeing someone else, but seeing it for himself, seeing them so happy, hit harder than he could have imagined. She had moved on quickly. Just like that. The same person who had begged him not to leave her, the person who had promised she was committed to their relationship, had already replaced him with someone else. The anger that had been simmering beneath the surface boiled over. He could feel his chest tighten, his hands clench into fists. But more than anger, there was this sick feeling of betrayal. She didn't even give him the decency to wait. The temptation to reach out to her, to lash out, was stronger now. He could almost feel his fingers itching to type something, to tell her what he felt, to confront her again. But he didn't. He wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. No, Stephen realized there was something bigger he had to do. He wasn't going to beg for closure or apologize for things that weren't his fault. Instead, he would make sure she would never forget the damage she had caused. He knew that the best way to deal with someone like her was not to be the victim anymore. It was to show her, in his own quiet way, that she had made a mistake. Stephen's mind was made up. He wasn't just going to get over this, he was going to make her feel the weight of her actions. But it wouldn't be an immediate thing. No, this would be slow-burn revenge, one that would make her realize the consequences of her decisions, piece by piece. And as much as it stung to admit, Stephen knew that he needed this closure. He needed to take back control. The anger still simmered inside him, but now it had a direction. It was time to make her pay. Stephen had always prided himself on his patience and his ability to think things through before taking action. But after what had happened, after the lies, the manipulation, and the constant gaslighting, he was ready to take matters into his own hands. The idea of revenge lingered in his mind like a shadow, but it wasn't about a grand gesture or a public confrontation. It was about slow, deliberate action. He needed to make her realize what she had done, make her feel it deeply. But he would do it on his terms. He couldn't just sit back and let her move on without any consequence. She had taken so much from him, the trust, the love, the years they spent together, without even a second thought. He knew he couldn't change the past, but he could certainly make her understand that what she had done wasn't as easy to forget as she thought. Stephen didn't act immediately. The first thing he did was observe. He had to know her next move. What was she doing now? How was she living her life without him? Was she as happy as she appeared to be on social media? Was her new relationship really all it seemed? He started by gathering information, little things here and there. He contacted some of his mutual friends, just casual conversations, to see if they knew anything. They didn't know much, but one friend, Jake, let something slip. "She's really moved on fast, man," Jake said, sipping his drink. "I saw her with him the other day. They're practically inseparable." Stephen smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. It was exactly what he needed to hear. She was moving on, but not as smoothly as she wanted people to think. She was playing a game, pretending like everything was fine, when in reality, Stephen knew she had simply moved on because she had no conscience. She had already thrown away 2 years of a relationship, and now she was trying to rewrite history to make herself look good. Stephen's plan started to take shape as he let the details settle in his mind. It wasn't going to be anything dramatic at first. He didn't need to make a big show of it. He would quietly expose her for what she was, someone who couldn't even be honest with herself, let alone him. The next step involved something he knew all too well: her finances. Throughout their relationship, Stephen had helped her out in small ways, lending her money when she was short on rent or when she needed help paying for something. He had always trusted her, believing in the good of their relationship, but now he saw that all of that had been a lie. Stephen began tracking the money she owed him. He had kept records of the payments, the loans, and the small debts that she had promised to repay. He had always assumed it was a temporary thing, a little hiccup in their relationship that they could move past. But now it was a tool. She owed him a significant amount of money, and it was time to remind her of that. He sent her a message one day, keeping it civil, professional even, as he outlined the money she still owed him. He included a few details she had forgotten about, along with a request to settle the debt. Stephen knew that this would get her attention. After all, it wasn't just about the money. It was about showing her that she couldn't just walk away from everything, including the promises she had broken. "Hey," the message began, "I need to remind you about the money you still owe me. I know you've moved on and things are different now, but you promised to pay me back. I've been patient, but it's time to settle this. I've attached the breakdown of what's owed." He didn't expect her to pay immediately, but he knew this would cause her some discomfort. She had spent the last few months pretending that everything was fine, but now she had to face the reality that she had unfinished business with him. And that was just the beginning. The moment Stephen hit send, he felt a strange mix of satisfaction and anticipation. He had made the first move. It was subtle, calculated, but it was enough to start the slow burn of his plan. For the first time since the breakup, he felt like he was no longer a passive victim in the story. He was finally in control. He didn't have to wait long for her to respond. The next afternoon, his phone buzzed with a message from her. "Stephen, I don't know why you're bringing this up now. I thought we had moved on from all of this," she wrote, her tone defensive, almost trying to hide her unease behind her words. "You know I've had a lot going on, and I really don't appreciate you digging into the past like this. I'll pay you back when I can." The message was exactly what he expected. She was acting like the victim again, just like she had during their relationship. She was trying to make him feel guilty for reminding her of the money she owed. She wasn't the one who was entitled to that luxury. Stephen allowed himself a small smile. He wasn't going to get caught up in her games anymore. The last 2 years had been enough to teach him that. He didn't reply right away. Patience was key. Instead, he let the message sit for a few hours, giving her time to stew over it. When he finally responded, his words were deliberate and straightforward. "I get it. You're busy and things have changed. But I need the money. I'm not going to keep waiting. If it's really not a big deal, you can transfer it whenever you're able." He kept it neutral. No anger, no emotion. Just the facts. He had made his point. She had to acknowledge that he wasn't someone she could just brush off anymore. What he didn't expect, though, was her reply the next morning. This time, it wasn't just about the money. "Listen, Stephen," the message began. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but you're really being unfair. I thought we could remain civil. I never meant for things to go the way they did. It wasn't like that with him. Please, can we just move on? I've already told you everything." The message felt like another attempt at gaslighting, trying to make him feel like the one who was in the wrong. She was acting like the innocent party again, like her actions didn't have any real consequences. But Stephen wasn't buying it anymore. He knew the truth, and he wasn't going to let her twist the narrative anymore. This time, he didn't just focus on the money. He had a bigger goal now. He wanted her to feel the weight of everything. He wanted her to know that no matter how much she tried to run from the truth, he wasn't going to let her off the hook so easily. "I'm not interested in your excuses anymore," Stephen replied, his words cold. "We both know what happened. I'm done with the lies, and I'm done being your punching bag. Pay me back what you owe, and then we'll see where things go. If you want to move on, that's fine, but I'm not letting you get away with everything you did." He hit send, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction as the words left his phone. It was clear now, he wasn't the person she could manipulate anymore. He wasn't the person she could walk all over. Stephen didn't hear from her for a few days after sending his last message. At first, he felt the familiar flutter of anxiety. Was she ignoring him? Was she pretending like nothing had happened? The silence gnawed at him, but deep down he knew he was doing the right thing. She had always managed to manipulate the situation when they were together, convincing him that his concerns were invalid, that he was overreacting. But now, he was in control. Then, just as he was beginning to focus on moving forward, her reply finally came. This time, there was no defensiveness, no attempt to gaslight him. She seemed almost defeated. "I'll transfer the money," she wrote. "But Stephen, please, I'm begging you, stop. I know what I did and I'm sorry. I'm not proud of myself." It was brief, almost as if she were trying to placate him. Her words felt empty, not genuine. And yet for Stephen that wasn't the point. He didn't care about her apologies anymore. What mattered was that she acknowledged what she had done, even if just in the smallest way. As the days went by, Stephen noticed that her behavior was changing. She started reaching out to mutual friends, subtly trying to paint herself as the victim, as though she had been the one wronged by him. The games were still ongoing, but this time, he wasn't playing her game. Stephen was no longer the man who would let her off the hook. It wasn't just the money anymore. It was about accountability. He could feel the shift within himself. The anger that had once consumed him was now gone, replaced by a cold satisfaction. She was starting to feel the consequences of her actions, and it wasn't because he had yelled at her or tried to confront her. It was because he had simply stopped tolerating her behavior. However, there was one more step to take. She had always thought she could get away with everything. She thought she could cheat, lie, and walk away without any real consequences. And though Stephen had already taken back control by not allowing himself to be manipulated anymore, there was still one last thing he needed to do. He was going to let everyone know. Stephen had spent months protecting her reputation, trying to believe in the person she had shown him. But now, she had shown her true colors, and he wasn't about to let her continue to hide behind a facade. He went to social media, something he hadn't done before. He wasn't interested in airing their dirty laundry publicly, but the silence was no longer an option. He was going to tell his side of the story. The post wasn't about bashing her or revenge for the sake of revenge. It was simply the truth. He wrote about his 2-year relationship, the love, the trust, and the eventual betrayal. He didn't name her, but anyone who knew the two of them would easily recognize the story. The post didn't need to be long or dramatic. It simply read, "I spent 2 years of my life with someone I thought I could trust. I believed in us, in what we had. But sometimes, the truth isn't what we want it to be. I've learned a lot about myself during this time, and I've learned that I'm not the one who should apologize for being betrayed." The message was simple, but it was powerful. Stephen wasn't trying to ruin her life or make her feel like a villain. He just wanted her to realize that the lies she had told didn't go unnoticed. The truth was out now. The post Stephen made didn't immediately garner a huge response, but he noticed a few subtle things. His friends who had been quiet for so long now started to reach out to him, checking in, offering support. They had all known something was off, but didn't know the full story. Now, the truth was there, out in the open, and it made everything clearer. As the days passed, Stephen watched from the sidelines. She, the person who had made him feel like he was crazy for asking questions, for trusting his instincts, was now facing the silent consequences of her actions. People started to pull away from her. Some of them unfollowed her on social media, while others whispered about the truth that Stephen had laid bare. It wasn't a public smear campaign, but the subtle shift was enough. Her social media followers dropped, and people who had once stood by her started to question her. Her carefully crafted image of being a sweet, innocent woman began to crumble. Piece by piece. Stephen didn't care about the drama, but it was satisfying to see her squirm, to see her realize that she wasn't as untouchable as she thought. The most satisfying part was knowing that she couldn't blame Stephen for the change. The world was waking up to the reality of who she really was. But even as Stephen started to feel some sense of satisfaction, there was still that emptiness. He had taken back his control, he had exposed her lies, and yet he couldn't ignore the part of him that still hurt. The emotional toll wasn't something he could just shake off with a few successful moves in his slow-burn revenge. The heartbreak lingered. One evening, after a long day at work, Stephen found himself staring out of the window, lost in thought. He had taken control. Yes, but what did that really mean? Had his actions brought him peace? Or had they simply been another way for him to try and make sense of the chaos she had left in his life? The sound of his phone buzzing snapped him out of his thoughts. He checked the message. It was from Jake, the mutual friend who had been supportive through the whole mess. "I saw your post, man. I didn't know what happened, but I've got your back. You deserve better." Stephen smiled, though it was bittersweet. Jake had always been there, even when he couldn't see it. He took a deep breath, letting the feeling of support wash over him. Maybe this was the final part of his slow-burn revenge, the realization that he had people who cared about him, people who weren't blinded by the illusions she had created. It wasn't just about exposing her anymore. It was about rebuilding his own life, surrounded by the people who truly mattered. He had finally let go of the idea that he needed to make her pay for what she had done. He didn't need to keep chasing revenge. The truth was his peace was his victory. But that didn't mean he was done. There was one more thing he needed to do. It had been nearly 5 months since the breakup, and Stephen's life was beginning to settle into a new normal. He was getting used to being on his own again, learning to enjoy his own company without the weight of the past constantly hanging over him. Work had been busy, and he had thrown himself into his hobbies and his friendships. He was stronger, more self-aware, and, most importantly, he had found a sense of peace he hadn't had in years. The slow-burn revenge was working. The social dynamics had shifted, and he had made his point. He wasn't someone to be overlooked or manipulated. But even with all the satisfaction, there was a lingering thought in the back of his mind. What about the money she owed him? He had asked for the money, repeatedly. She had promised to pay him back. But like everything else, her promises had been empty. The unresolved debt still gnawed at him. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about holding her accountable for her actions. Stephen had already given her a chance to make things right, but now he was done waiting. One evening, he found himself sitting at his kitchen table, scrolling through his phone. The thought of the money lingered in the back of his mind again. This was the final piece. She owed him. She needed to pay. This time, he wasn't sending a polite message. No, it was time for him to put things into action. He wasn't going to play her games anymore. He had spent too long giving her the benefit of the doubt, hoping that things would work out. They wouldn't. He opened up the contact information he had for her. The number was still there, just as it always had been. He stared at it for a moment, took a deep breath, and typed out the message. "Listen, I've been patient long enough. I've asked, I've reminded you, and I've given you plenty of time to settle things. But now, I'm tired of waiting. I'm putting this in writing. You owe me X dollars amount. I've been more than fair with you. If I don't receive the full payment by set date, I'll be taking legal action." He stared at the screen for a moment, making sure the message was clear. This wasn't a threat, it was a statement of fact. It was time to take back what she owed him. He sent it. For the first time in months, Stephen felt a surge of empowerment. It wasn't the thrill of getting back at her. It wasn't about seeing her squirm. It was about the closure, about the fact that he wasn't going to allow anyone to get away with disrespecting him. He had been fair, patient, and understanding, but that was no longer enough. Days passed, and he didn't hear from her. But Stephen didn't care. He had done what he needed to do. The ball was in her court now. On the day he had set as a deadline, Stephen received a message from her. "Okay, fine. I'll transfer the money by the end of the week. I'm sorry." He couldn't help but smile a little, though it wasn't out of satisfaction. He felt relieved, knowing that he had finally reclaimed his power in this situation. She had tried to manipulate him for so long, but now she had to answer for her actions. She had to deal with the consequences. By the end of the week, the money was in his account. She had paid him back, just as she promised. But Stephen realized something that surprised him. He didn't feel the satisfaction he expected. The money didn't feel like a win. The real victory was in his ability to let go of the anger that had consumed him for so long. He had learned something important. True peace doesn't come from revenge or from getting back at someone. It comes from letting go and taking control of your own happiness. Stephen took a moment to appreciate that. He had grown, healed, and become a better version of himself. And now, with everything behind him, he could move forward with a sense of freedom he hadn't known in years. I'll see you in the next story.